This program is going to cover troubleshooting the Thermo King bus air conditioning unit. The first thing you need to do is observe and monitor the suction pressures, discharge pressures, and check the condition of the suction line. The suction line could either be frosty and cold, or it could be nice, warm, and dry. Suction pressures could be very low, or they could be very high. And then your discharge pressures, we'll take a look at a bit, could be either high or low as well. Let's start out with the suction side. First thing you need to know is what normal suction pressure should be. For 134A, we're looking between 30 and 50 psi. So the hotter the day, the higher the pressure. With refrigerant 407C, we're looking between 50 and 80 pounds. So let's look at some of the conditions that we could run into. Let's start out first with a frosty condition, low suction pressure. There could be some normal operation going on if the bus is just controlling the thermostat with a very light load. But normally what causes low suction pressure and a frosted line is airflow through that evaporator is restricted. You could have a dirty air filter, or the evap coil itself is dirty, causing less air to move and not getting enough heat to the refrigerant to boil off, causing a frost condition. Or we could have a evap motor problem where we're not getting enough voltage, motor's running too slow, or take a look at the mechanical part. The fan blades could be broken or incorrectly adjusted. Things that can cause high suction pressure in a frosted line. Here again, you could have a normal condition if you have a very heavy load on the evaporator, but that probably wouldn't last too long. As far as internally, what you could have going on is an expansion valve malfunction where the feeler bulb is not making good contact to the suction line. The needle could be eroded, where we're allowing too much refrigerant to come through, or the expansion valve itself could be out of adjustment, causing too little superheat. Another problem we see out there is an overcharge of refrigerant. If the system's overcharged, you're going to have higher pressures and cause that refrigerant to flood through and cause frosting. So let's take a look at what causes a dry, warm suction line. If we take a look at the things that cause a dry, warm suction line and low suction pressure, probably the most common thing is a low refrigerant charge. Check your charge level. Check for a restriction in a liquid line, like a plugged up dryer. Or it could be the expansion valve malfunctioning, where you have an inlet screen that's plugged, maybe there's dirt or wax in there, or maybe there's a soldering job where there's some soldering flux that got into the expansion valve, or a piece of solder. A sensing bulb can lose its charge. If that is the case, that unit will probably just shut down on low suction pressure. It could be an adjustment again on the expansion valve, where it's closed too much and gives you high superheat. Too much oil in the system. Too much oil in the system takes up the space, can cause some type of restrictions in there. Restricted line in the low side. This could be the dryer restricted, again, or it could be in the suction line coming back. Airflow through the condenser coil is too cold. If it's colder temperature, your pressures are going to be on the lower side. Let's look at things that cause high suction pressure in a dry, warm line. You could have a compressor malfunction. If you have a reciprocating compressor, you do have valve plates that could be leaking. You could have leaking or broken piston reeds, worn piston sleeve assembly, what we call blow-by. Or it could be a heavy load on the evaporator where the compressor is turning too slow, or you got some belt or clutch slipping. So this concludes our suction pressure, suction line inspections and checks. Let's now take a look at our compressor discharge pressure. We can have compressor discharge pressure either being too low or too high. Normal head pressures for 134A are between 150 and 200. Normal head pressure, discharge pressure for 407C is 250 to 300. So what can cause low discharge pressure? Well, it could be low charge. We could have too much cold air going across the condenser coil on a cooler day. Compressor is running too slow. We could have restrictions to our refrigerant flow again. The liquid line could be restricted, or we could have some type of suction line blockage. We could have a belt or clutch slipping, or if you have a reciprocating compressor, we could have leaky discharge valve plates again, or leaky broken piston reeds, worn piston sleeve assembly. Those are basically the things that cause low discharge pressure. The items that cause high discharge pressure could be an overcharge of refrigerant, airflow into the condenser is too low or restricted. It's very common that we have restricted airflow because we could have a dirty coil. We could have debris that's in that condenser coil that's restricting the airflow. There could be leaves and other debris up there that need to be cleaned out. We could have a condenser fan that's spinning too slow or a motor problem. Don't overlook the mechanical part, again, as far as the fan blades being broken or incorrectly adjusted. There is a chance there could be non-condensables in the system. Air could get in the system. Nitrogen could be in the system left over from leak checking. There could be hot air going across the condenser coil where maybe the air is not getting out as good as it should and is recycling somewhat. Or there could be a restriction on the high side of the system, the inline service valve partially closed. This pretty much concludes our Thermo King troubleshooting